and welcome to Mind Your Being. If you're a regular listener, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming back. And if you've just found the podcast or someone shared a link with you, I'm so glad you're here too. I'm Cass, and this episode feels a little different because this week marks 1 year since I pressed record on the very first episode of Mind Your Being. Can you believe it's been 12 months already? And to be honest, when I recorded that first episode, I wasn't thinking about podcast anniversaries. I was simply hoping these conversations might help you feel a little bit more informed about your health and well-being. But what I didn't expect was just how much these conversations would change the way I think about health. So when I chose the name Mind Your Being, I wanted it to reflect the idea that our health isn't just about one body part, one symptom, or one diagnosis. To me, health is about caring for our whole being. And I think I understood that intuitively, but I've realised I only understood it at a surface level. After spending the last year talking with experts from so many different fields, I began to notice the connections across conversations. Our mind affects our body affects our mind, our relationships impact our health. What's good for our heart is also good for our brain. Our muscles protect our bones. Our bones influence how independently we can live. I've come to appreciate just how beautifully interconnected everything really is. When I look at the topics covered on Mind Your Being in this past year, one of the biggest shifts for me has been the way I think about strength. For most of my adult life, I've included some resistance training in my regular exercise routine. But if I'm honest, until recently, it was mostly about appearance. If you'd asked me a couple of years ago why strength mattered, I probably would have said because everyone says it's important as we get older. I knew it mattered, but I don't think I really understood why. Through my conversations with Professor Belinda Beck, Dr. Tracy Clissold, Dr. Justin Keogh, and Amy Wildner, my understanding deepened. I began to see that strength isn't just about muscles. It's about building the foundations for healthy aging. Now, when I think about strength, I think about strong muscles protecting my bones. I think about staying independent as I get older. I think about preventing falls. I think about confidence. I think about being able to travel, to carry groceries, to pick up future grandchildren, and continue doing the things that make life meaningful. Before speaking with Professor Belinda Beck and Dr. Tracy Clissold, I honestly hadn't given my bones much thought. Like many women, they simply weren't on my radar. But now I understand that muscles and bones are constantly communicating with one another, and stronger bones help support us for the life we want to live. And that changed the way I exercise. I now deliberately prioritise strength training because I finally understand what it's helping me build, not just for today, but for the years ahead. So now I'm far less interested in how exercise changes my appearance, and I'm much more interested in what it allows me to do. Will my body be able to support me over the next 30 years? Am I building strength that will help me remain active, capable, and independent? So in many ways, I've come to see strength as one of the foundations of healthy aging, not because it's about lifting the heaviest weights, but because it supports so many other aspects of our health. It supports our bones, our balance, our metabolism, our confidence, and our ability to keep doing the everyday things that give our lives meaning. And once again, I found myself coming back to the same realisation. Everything is connected. When I spoke with Dr. Amy Hutchison about metabolic health, and later with Dr. Sarah Mackay about brain health, another connection became clear. So before these conversations, I probably thought about heart health and brain health as two separate areas of health. But what surprised me was learning just how closely they're connected. Our vascular system, that network of blood vessels carrying oxygen and nutrients throughout our body, is nourishing not only our heart, but also our brain. It helped me understand why so many of the same everyday habits keep appearing in conversation after conversation. Things like movement, sleep, nutrition, healthy blood pressure, healthy cholesterol, healthy blood sugar. They're not just supporting one part of our health, they're supporting many different systems at the same time. With each conversation, more of the bigger picture started to come into focus. I began to appreciate just how interconnected our bodies, our minds, and our lives really are. The conversations around mental health have probably changed me in the most personal way. I've spoken with psychologists about overthinking, rumination, early childhood experiences, depression, PTSD, OCD, and acceptance. One thing that stayed with me was hearing Mark Baxter talk about the importance of the therapeutic relationship between the therapist and the client. Not just techniques, not just diagnoses, but allowing someone to feel safe enough to be curious, to be vulnerable, to explore parts of ourselves we may have kept hidden for years. And that word, vulnerability, kept appearing throughout the year. It appeared in conversations about relationships, it appeared in conversations about therapy, and eventually it appeared in my own story. So earlier this year, I shared publicly that I've lived with obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, for most of my life. I was so nervous about releasing that episode because for many years I'd carried a lot of embarrassment and shame about it. Before recording that conversation with Dr. David Cooper, I'd only ever spoken about my OCD with a handful of people. It was something that I kept private for most of my life. And I was 51 when we recorded that conversation. And that is a really long time to carry shame and embarrassment around something about yourself that you can't control. And I was so worried about what people might think or how they might react to me next time they saw me. And I had my own older brother call me after the podcast aired and after I'd posted something on social media to ask me about it because he didn't even know. I think you get really good at hiding things, especially when you're carrying shame or embarrassment about something. Yeah, it was a lot. But do you know what? After releasing that episode, something unexpected happened for me. I felt lighter. And not because the OCD had disappeared, but because I wasn't carrying that secret anymore. And it's hard to explain if you've never felt shame about something about yourself that you didn't want people to know about. But in speaking about it, I felt a relief, actually. And later, with Mark Baxter, we were talking about acceptance. And I realised something that has stayed with me ever since. Sometimes acceptance doesn't arrive before the vulnerability. Sometimes vulnerability is what creates acceptance. Me sharing my story actually helped me to accept myself a little more. And as someone who calls herself a recovering perfectionist, it's a lot for me to say I felt a little bit more acceptance. But during the conversation with Mark, he was pointing out that one of the things he notices is that ultimately people are kind of seeking more self-acceptance. And sometimes I wonder, why is it so hard for us to give ourselves self-compassion and self-acceptance? So anyway, me sharing my story helped me accept myself a little more. And it also reminded me of something else, and that is that shame often thrives in silence, and it only begins to lose its power when we bring it into the light. Because once we open up and talk about the thing that's creating the shame, shame loses its momentum, its power, its hold. My hope in sharing that conversation was not to tell my story. It was to help people better understand OCD, to challenge some of the myths and the stigma that still exist around OCD. and to remind anyone who may be struggling with OCD or with any aspect of their mental health that you're not alone, that there is hope, and that reaching out for support can be an important first step toward healing. Another thread that kept appearing throughout the year was relationships. And that's because our relationships can really impact the quality of our life. From my conversations, I realised healthy relationships aren't about avoiding discomfort. They're about learning how to move through it together, to have difficult conversations, to say I'm struggling, to admit when we're wrong, to ask for help, to see and be seen. I love that one. To see and be seen. What a gift. And they're not easy things to do. But time and time again, I heard that vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's often the doorway to deeper connection. And as I've reflected on all of these conversations, something else has become clear. When I started this podcast, I thought I was creating a place to learn about health. And a year later, I think it's become something a little more than that. It's become a place where the conversations aren't just about health, they're also about being human. And maybe that's what we've been exploring together all along. Questions like, how do we care for ourselves? How do we care for each other? How do we build strength? How do we reduce suffering? How do we create lives that feel meaningful? Those are deeply human questions. Perhaps every conversation is another opportunity to understand ourselves a little better. And as I reflect on this first year of Mind Your Being, I find myself coming back to this one simple question. How can we live well? And not because I expect there to be one perfect answer, but because I think it's a question worth continuing to explore. And before I finish, I want to say a massive thank you to every guest who has so generously shared their knowledge, their experience and their passion, and they've given up their free time to help us better understand our health and ourselves. And a big thank you to you, the listeners. Every one of you that has listened to an episode or multiple episodes, left a review. My friend Kerry, who leaves a review on Spotify with every episode, thank you so much. Every one of you who shared an episode with a friend, sent me a message on social media. Your support of Mind Your Being and of me, I'm so grateful for that. Thank you. And if these conversations have helped you feel a little more informed, a little more curious, or simply reminded you you're not alone, then I feel so grateful that I didn't wait until I felt completely ready before releasing this podcast. I had so much uncertainty and plenty of moments of self-doubt along the way. I still do, to be honest. Like often I'll be talking to a friend saying, I don't know if I should post this on social media, or I'm not sure how this episode will be received, but I just kept taking the next small step. And guess what? Here we are 1 year later. And that's another thing this past year has taught me. We don't always need to have the whole path mapped out before we begin. Sometimes we just need the courage to take the next small step and to trust that the path will become clearer as we keep moving forward. Now, I had heard that from people before. Take some action and the path will reveal itself. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. But honestly, having done that, I can tell you that absolutely the path will reveal itself. Just keep taking the next small step towards whatever you want to do with your life, or areas of your life where you'd like to see some change and you're not sure where to start because it feels overwhelming. Then take the next small, little itty bitty step. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture to get you started. And I wanted to mention this podcast is still very much a one-woman operation. I'm balancing it alongside my part-time work, and I don't have every episode for the next 12 months mapped out yet, But I'm so excited for all the conversations still to come, and I'd love to hear from you. If there's a topic you'd love me to explore or a guest you'd like to hear from, please reach out. I am so excited for the next year because doing this podcast connects some of my favorite things, and they are learning, health and well-being, connecting with others is massive for me, and I love to talk. So it covers all the bases. So to you listening, thank you for learning alongside me. Thank you for your curiosity. Thank you so much for being a part of the first year of the podcast. I hope whatever you're doing this week ahead, that you can find a little bit of time just for you. I hope you can speak to yourself as if you were speaking to a loved one. And I hope you can take some time to have a little fun as well. So until next time, take care, be kind to yourself, and mind your being. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mind Your Being podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please follow the show wherever you get your podcasts and share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. If you have a moment, please leave a quick review. It really helps others discover the podcast. Thanks again for being here. Take care, and until next time, mind your being.